My name is Eb and I'm a spoken word poet.
My name is Abdullahi Hijam and I'm a student studying urban planning.
My name's Adit and I'm a student.
My name's Ayan and I'm a student.
My name's Ajok Marielle and I'm a youth advocate.
My name's Daniel Hale Michael and I'm an engineering student.
My name is Munya Ahmed and I'm an aerospace engineering student.
My name's Tizita and I'm a concerned community member.
My name is Reem and I'm a community organiser.
I think in one word, I would say denial. Everybody's denying it. Yeah, I don't think anybody will want to admit to the fact that they're racist, or even if they have any discriminative views towards certain communities. Nobody wants to admit to that. Nobody wants to be held accountable. And so, really, in one word, that's how I describe it. It's just a constant fate of denial. And
Why do you think that is?
fear. I mean, how many people want to admit to their wrongful doings? Not many. And all of us are trying to act righteous. And so it's really just being hidden. And nobody really wants to come up to the table and be like, okay, I think I have a problem because the media is feeding me this. And so let me hear your side of the story. We're constantly buying one side of what the media wants to tell us.
Well, I think, Australia first has to recognise the Indigenous community in its constitution. So, we're newcomers, and so there's a long history of racism in Australia, and I think we have a lot to contribute, and ensuring that this discussion about racism is there, and that we keep pushing the government and institutions and being really articulate about what the issue is. We've been here 20 years, and to expect it to change, suddenly, I think is a bit unrealistic. And I think we need to kind of, have a lot of partnerships with other interested groups who have experience, have overcome, have, developed through racism and are actually flourishing in Australia.
One thing I like to say is that I think sometimes we privilege racism done by actors as opposed to structural racism, as if we see someone on the road and they might say something racist against us and we're like, wow, that's racist. But then there's such subtle forms of racism, whether it's in the legal system or in the police force, and that's ingrained. And so a lot of people deny that. And so they try to focus on the little bits of racism that you can see, but then there's much broader issues. So we need to discuss those broader issues, I would think.
I honestly don't ever believe the world will be rid of racism completely. I think that will never happen, unless everyone's the same skin colour or we all look the same. Then that'll possibly happen. But I think little subtle racial comments that are towards people aren't really that detrimental. Like, I just see it and I go, well, okay, cool, and walk on. But if it's racism to the point where it's affecting me growing personally, then that's when it becomes a problem. For example, employers. I need a job, to live and function in my life. And if I can't get a job simply on the basis of my name, then that's when racism bothers me.
It's that thing that people are taught to be racist, and they're taught through their family, they're taught through society, their community, through media. Those things that people say about us because of the colour of skin is a part of a bigger problem as well.
So I actually be able to go to uni and go to work without somebody asking about my hair and if I play the African drums. I think you have to deal with all sorts of things, and I don't know if I can place a value in certain things above others.
The onus is on us to sort of teach people or to educate people on racism, and it's as though we're sort of at fault and we have to justify our existence.
From my cousin, my personal cousin, he's one of the closest cousins I have. He's a beautiful human being. He's not a violent person, and he got his leg broken by the police, Victoria Police, because he was trying to stop a quarrel between two of his friends, and the police just saw a group of black guys aggressive in their eyes and attacked him from the back and broke his leg. And to add insult to injury, they didn't give him an avenue to report or to get the matter dealt with. Every time he tried to deal with it, they would just kind of brush it off and do nothing about it. And he just left it at that. So he feels like the justice system has completely failed him.
2 points I'd like to make for how they interact with the community. Number one is not something I personally experienced, but what I've been told is that the police, the Victoria Police, try to embed themselves into community events to solicit information. Now, I haven't experienced that, but I've been told by several people who that's happened to. It's kind of a shifty way. They're trying to say they're incorporating the community, but they're trying to get information. And the second point I'd like to make, it's something I experienced when I was younger. I live in Carlton, and I do remember the Carlton police officers used to come down next to the courts, and they'd come with their flashlights and say, oh, there's been a robbery in the community, were you guys involved? And we're like, nah. And then so they just turn on their flashlights, they're like, do you guys have any pot on you or anything like that? And so they're trying to get a response out of you, like obviously a response like, what the hell, we're just chilling here. And so they try to like aggravate you. When you respond, they probably smash you. And so I've experienced that when they try to aggravate you a bit.
So how does that make you feel? Like, do you feel that they're removing you from that public space, that space?
Yeah, you don't want to chill, especially at night. If they come around, you don't want to chill out there.
It's even things that we're taught at school. We're taught the police are there to help you. The police are there to protect you. But those kind of advice, usually I feel like it's targeted to the white community, because the type of advice that I give myself or the way I conduct myself is sort of, all the police are there to sort of instigate something. So be prepared, or let's say if I was at a club and then the police came and there was a raid, I know I would be one of the people who they would interview or pull aside. If there aren't black men around, I know that I'm going to be the next person.
2 police officers came in uniform with very intimidating, and they came in their uniform with their batons and stuff like that, and they sat down and were talking to us, so we had to sit down on the floor, and they sat on the chairs, and they were talking to us about, they said, if you see any crimes or if you see anything going around, you can talk to us, we're friends, and it just shocked me, because obviously they're not getting intel from the boys, so they're going to the girls and getting that. And I remember I was talking to my friend Aya, and we were texting each other. I'm just like, what are they doing here?
I think the biggest benefit with the people's hearing is that it's therapeutic. I can't even pronounce that word, but also the fact that it shows that these things are not isolated, that there's a lot of people going through a lot of things. I've come across people who try to say that it's over-exaggerated or it's isolated and it's just one bad apple here and there, but it's much more systematic and you can see it everywhere. And so I think that's the biggest benefit. It shows there's a big number of people who've suffered due to racial profiling and those similar incidents.
People's hearings, I think it's going to be one of its kind in Australia, and hopefully have a rippling effect that might change the debate in Australia.
It'll certainly be good to put a face to all the stories, not just for me, but for all the wider community, I guess, who isn't really aware of what's happening. Putting a face to what's happening out there. It could be someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's father, someone's brother, someone's sister. So I think it'll really hit home for people.
But it's going to change the dynamics of who's in the position of power to judge. And I think that will be really interesting to see who's going to be sitting in the judge's seat and how they take on those cases compared to what the justice system and the police compare how they've kind of seen those issues and those cases, and also it takes the burden off the victim. You're not on top of your trauma. You don't have to kind of stress about proving your case. You just have to speak the honest truth and what's happened to you, and I think that will be amazing.
We can see the different ways that it affects different people in the community. So I think you were saying earlier about how you don't access certain public spaces because you're worried about police contact. Well, we can address these things in a kind of a broader space, a bigger space.
There are two aspects you can see it. So raising awareness, so with the wider white community and communities who are ignorant and who aren't aware of what's happening, that this is happening in their backyard. So that's one thing. The thing I think we're all coming from is the healing side of it, so the therapeutic side of it, and how it's, talking is such a great way, a starter for disenfranchised and communities that have been marginalised and just stripped away of all their rights and their, as human beings, for them to start talking, to see that this is a shared struggle and see that they aren't isolated with their own stories. And what's great is that it would be shared within people who they can identify with, like familiar faces, people like us, even though some of us might not have experienced it, but we've experienced other forms of racism that is all interconnected and interlinked. And I think that they will feel much more at ease. So I think that's one thing that I think is really unique about People's Hearing. And, this is not just, so there'll be a report after it as well. So it won't just be submitted, as I mentioned before, it won't be just submitted into the police inquiry, but the UN rapporteurs, when stuff is said about the United, although we have criticisms of how they work, but how the United Nations when the United Nations scrutinise or critique something that the Australian government is doing, Australians tend to actually are aware of it. And I think the wider society would be like, oh, wait, this happens, we're actually considered a racist country, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. And that discomfort, they need to live in that discomfort. They need to be like, okay, yes, there is something wrong with that. There's something wrong. There is racism in this country. What can we do about it? Listen to us. These are our stories, and we need to act upon it after it. So I think this is a great stepping stone for that catalyst in people to start acting and start talking and start confidently speaking, and also addressing and using initiatives to address this problem.